Welcome to another episode of Just More Fix. This is James. With me this episode is Lacey.
Hey.
You can find us online at justmorefix.com or on Twitter at justmorefix. If you like us, you can support us at Patreon, and you can give us a rating and review at iTunes wherever you find us at. In this episode, we're going to talk about building indie RPG days. And now, it's time to get our gaming fix.
I'm Willie D. Nelson from All Things Good and Nerdy, a pop culture podcast, part of the Gonna Geek Network. Just like the show you're checking out now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other tantalizingly geeky shows at GonnaGeekNetwork.com.
Welcome to Just More Fix. Couple quick announcements before we get things rolling today. Real quick, Worms is on schedule to be released at the end of April, so we're getting the print process set up, and I'm getting a proof of it tomorrow, and should be up and running and printed through by the end of this week, and have those in the mail to all of our Patreon supporters on April 30th. So if you are a Patreon supporter, the PDF will be going up by Friday of this week, and the print copies will be going to the supporters that are at the appropriate level on April the 30th. So look for those in the mail. We'll be sending those out to you all, and hopefully you guys enjoy some awesome Worms terribleness, and you can inflict awful, terrible horrors on your players. So, I mentioned before about new patrons getting access to the zine, so we're going to extend that through May. So if you are just finding us through whatever means that might be, if you support us on Patreon, you will gain access to our Worms OSR Adventure First Quarterly zine, as long as you are signed up through by the end of May. So May 30th, right? 30 days in May? 31 days in May. 31 days in May. January, February, March, and April. Okay, very good. All right. And if you are currently a Patreon supporter or coming to us as a new supporter, make sure that your address is updated on Patreon so that we can get those mailed out to the right places to all of you.
Otherwise, somebody's going to be really stoked or freaked out.
Yeah, really weirded out.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. So I didn't mention it, but we did get the two pieces of artwork that I commissioned from Mustafa Bakir got sent to us, and they are up on the Patreon now as a preview. So the Worm Man and sort of the infectious creature that is coming out is two of the pieces of artwork that we commissioned that are on there. So you can check out those. And I think I put all the actual period woodcuts that are public domain are up on there as well. So if you kind of want to see the style and theme of artwork that we've gone with, they're all up there, and you can check those out at our Patreon. So final announcement and relevant to this episode is our next Indie RPG Day is May the 5th. So it's the Revenge of the 5th. And I am going to be running Degenesis by request. So looking forward to getting that game to the table because I put it to the group of people, and Alan was like, I think I would choose Degenesis over the other couple options because I mentioned the Dark Eye and something else. So I was like, cool, I'm good with Degenesis. That's all good.
May not even prep anything then. There's not a point.
Hope to see you all there if you guys are in the Terre Haute area on the Revenge of the 5th. All right, so I know you out there are all probably tired of hearing about indie RPG days, but recently I was on
But we don't care.
Yeah, so we're going to keep running them. But
that's what we do here.
So a couple weeks ago, I was scrolling through an RPG forum, and there was the classic question about how do you get your table to try new games? What do you do? We only play 50. They won't try anything else. We only play Pathfinder. We only play whatever it is.
Kind of irritates me a little bit.
Yeah.
Because it's not really a game question. It's like a life question. You're asking how you sell something to someone else. It has nothing to do with games, really.
Right, yeah.
Like, how do I get my child to try Brussels sprouts?
Bribery. So buy them pizza and beer.
Bacon.
And say that you're going to, Well, something that we have came to realize is that we gave a lot of advice about how to get people to try new games. And I definitely think it's relevant because we have sort of taken that approach at our table. And now it's at the point where you can basically pitch any game and we'll try it at least once. As long as there's a certain amount of enthusiasm about the game and it's not a complete write-out game, I'm not playing this game, whatever it is, right? And we'll give it a try. Like, I've even conceded that if it ever happens, I will, in fact, try Maid. I may die a little bit inside while I do it.
I'm going to be really sad if we never, ever play the game.
It's going to be like our white whale. So I'm okay with that.
I'll be 70. Someone run Made for me, please.
So with this podcast and everything else we have done, we talked about wanting to grow small press games because there's a lot of amazing things happening out there with them. And while I realized we can sit here and talk about these games all we want, really you need to get out there and do something about it, right? So that's what sparked our idea to go run these indie RPG days. So we've been doing them for almost a year now, and I'm just going to run down the list of the games that we have ran so you guys can see.
I just want to say before you start, like, for anybody that doesn't have access to the pre-show, which you would if you're a Patreon supporter, I had no idea at all that we ran this many games. Like, you would ask me to give a number, I'd probably been like, I don't know, 10.
Right.
And if you'd asked me how many I'd run, I'd be like, probably 2.
Right.
It's bananas.
So we've been doing them for almost a year now, and we basically show up and run one-shots. And a lot of the games that we've ran, we could develop them into a longer game, but the idea behind Indie RPG Days is to continue to expose people to new, different kinds of games,
It's
right?
a taste test.
Right. So I'm going to run down the list here real quick, okay? So, and this is pretty crazy. We didn't realize it was this long. So Bedlam Hall, Lamentations of the Flame Princess, Lamentations of the Flame Princess, Mashed, Dread, Spirit of 77, Tales from the Loop, Microscope, Night Witches, Troubadours, Worms, which you can get access to through our Patreon, Blood in the Chocolate, Seventh Sea, Degenesis, which will be happening in a couple weeks here, Dogs in the Vineyard, Mothership, Puppet Land, Numenera, Fate, Quiet Ear, and Skeletons. So that's 20 games, 20 different indie RPGs that we brought to the game store and ran them. And as it turns out, we've mentioned it in the past couple episodes, we sort of have built a second gaming group now that is the Indie Game Days gaming group, right?
There's a couple of people that fluctuate in and out, and then there's a solid group of like 3 of them that are at every single one.
Right. So here was my thought, and this is where this whole episode kind of came from, right? Is if you're unable to coerce or convince or bribe, whatever it takes, your current gaming group to play these games, right? Or maybe you have 1 player at the table out of 4 that wants to try them. My suggestion is that you go to your friendly game store, right? And you talk to them and you say, hey, can we run indie games here on X day? Whatever it is, Saturday, right? So we block off 4-hour time blocks, right? And the game store is happy to have us there. They're happy to host us. You know, we do a good job. We're not rude. We clean up after ourselves. We're trying to bring people into the store, right? So it's sort of a two-way relationship in that respect, right? Mm-hmm. And then
we also started out running games that they had for sale.
Yes.
Like intentionally picking some games like, okay, these are the couple of indie games. It was basically Fate and Numenera,
right.
And that was pretty much it.
But since then, they have actually developed things out, and they have an indie RPG shelf now, which has probably 15 or 20 different RPG, of the sort of the hallmarks of the indie RPG scene or story gaming scene, however you want to say that. So after we got sort of the okay from the store, right? Because you shouldn't just be showing up and just making this happen. You need to set it up and make it an actual event, right? And that's my first piece of advice, is that whatever players you have at your table, set the date, make sure it's okay with the store, right? Mm-hmm. And then make it an event. So if the store has a Facebook page or a Twitter or any kind of social media presence on there, put it up as an event on there so that it can get shown and get promoted, right? And a little bit of effort with logos from the games you're going to run and a little bit of Photoshop or PowerPoint or GIMP or whatever, software you're familiar with, you can make a passable thing, a banner for Facebook or whatever it is, and toss it up there and see what happens, right?
Yeah. If you're worried, like if you're somebody who's not super outgoing, you're not great at pitching things, you're not great at selling something to someone, you really don't have to worry about talking to your gaming store because they just want people in the store.
Right.
Every person in the store is a chance to sell something.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an easy ask that you're going after here.
Yeah.
So
the big thing is to just make sure that you coordinate it so that you can actually make it an event, right?
Right.
So then people will put it on their calendar and it won't be, I was going to go to that thing, but I didn't. And you're always going to have some of that
planned. So you
right.
have like a table and a place to sit.
and you can tell them, I'm going to run Apocalypse World or whatever the chosen game is, right? Because if you can't find people to play this game with or run it for, right? Chances are there's a fair amount of other people out there that feel the same way, and you've just got to find a way to bring those people together, right? Mm-hmm. And that's all this is really doing. It's just facilitating that. And so instead of being frustrated and angry at your players because all you're doing is running the same game that you're tired of playing, right? Now you're being proactive and sort of funneling that frustration and energy into something that actually has the potential to move forward, right? So I'm not trying to say you should throw that old gaming group away, right? That's not at all what we're saying. We're saying if that's not the games they want to play, though, and you want to play them, then go track down the other players that will, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not cheating on your gaming. No, but like people have this weird like sense of loyalty. Like if I game with anyone else, it's like bringing shame upon my name as a gamer. Like,
right.
No, you can play and enjoy two different games. You are allowed to play both Xbox and PlayStation and Nintendo if you want. Like,
right.
This is the same kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Let me kind of make a few, I don't think arguments, but I ask you a couple questions about how we got past some of these things, right? Because I can see that it's really easy to say that you should go do this, right?
I have a couple of thoughts with how you should start.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So inevitably, when you're planning something like this, you have the first and foremost problem. One, you have no idea how many people will show up.
Right.
Even if people say they're going to show up on a Facebook event or Warhorn?
Warhorn.
Whatever. They buy tickets to it. However you're doing it, there's probably going to be some people that say they're going to be there and aren't there, right? And then you may have some people that walk in. So when we first started, we had 3 or 4 games prepped every time for the first probably at least 2 to 3 sessions.
Right.
So that we had a better idea how many people were going to show up, right? Mm-hmm. And
because we wanted to come with more games than we needed.
Right.
We would rather have people show up and be able to play a game than show up and tell them, sorry, we can't accommodate you today. Now, our situation is a little different because we have several GMs that can run several different games with different voices and all that kind of stuff. So that's a little bit.
But if it's just you, I would recommend still having a game that you could run with you and 2 other people, or a game that you could run with you and 5 other people. Mm-hmm. So that you're covered, and if you only have a couple people show up, you're not like, oh, well, this game isn't really going to work with just this number of people.
Right.
The other reason is when it comes to indie RPGs, it's not like you're playing D&D and everybody knows what they're getting into. They're showing up. They may not be familiar with any of these games at all, and they're very niche. So the same person that wants to play Korean War surgeon may not want to play a rotting skeleton in a tomb.
Right.
Okay, so if I have both mashed and skeletons prepped, I can give the people present an elevator pitch for those games and let them decide what sounds cool and what they're willing to stay and play. Mm-hmm. And if the majority of people want to play one and the other person doesn't, then, well, okay, we're going to play this game. We're going to do it with the majority, but hey, maybe show up next time. Or hey, if everybody has time and there's interest, maybe I can run that after this is over.
Right. I definitely agree. I think that tying back to the amount of players you're going to have at the table, initially it's pretty unpredictable, right? And it may be a situation where whatever game that you prep to bring to run, that you need to either, like you mentioned, have 2 different games. So this is if we have 2 people at the table, and this is if we have 6, right? But you have the ability to use either of those 2 games, or having one game that is flexible enough to where you can make adjustments to running it for 2 people or 6 people. Mm-hmm. Because
so that worked well for like 7C.
Yes.
It's good for that.
Yeah. So my main point with this is that if you only have 2 people show up, run a game. If you have 1 person show up, if at all possible, run a game. Because if they have a good time, they're going to tell someone. And then the next time or the next month, then maybe they bring someone else, right? And that's really how we have grown things, is we've grown it through word of mouth. And in fact, we've actually sort of drafted some people that work at the shop because they saw us doing this and they were like, oh, that game is really neat. Kind of want to play it. It's on the shelf. I really don't know how to do it. I'll come sit down and check it out, right?
Yeah, we've got 2 or 3 just gaming enthusiasts that have seen all of these games, have read about all these games, and own some of the games and just haven't got to play them.
Mm-hmm. So that's something I was going to touch on next, is that there are a lot of people that own some of these games and have never played them. And that might include the person going to start this indie RPG day, right? So I guess my question is there any advice or any tools that you can give to someone to overcome the jitters of running a game that they have never ran for a group of people before?
Okay. Yes. First of all, focus on what the game does really well. A lot of games have a fairly robust system. Some of the indie RPGs are not always as much as some of your other, like Pathfinder, D&D, Burning Wheel, whatever, super rules heavy games. A lot of these are less crunchy than that, but they may still have several things that you can call into play, but you're only doing a one shot. So if you're only focusing on the core mechanic and making sure you get the theme and flavor right, that's okay.
Yeah. That's 90% of what you're trying to do, because most small press games or story games, they find a particular genre or premise to build the game around, and that's what everything points to. So if you don't, in my mind, you don't want to run the Apocalypse World game that really challenges Apocalypse World, and it's really not exactly Apocalypse World. It's more like something else, right? You want to run Mad Max, the Apocalypse World, right? Because that's what you come to, that's what you sit down to play, right? You don't want to run Mouse Guard, where you're not really mice. You're sort of like these people, and it's not really like you're part of the guard. You're part of this other thing. That's not, find what that game does well and do that. Now, if the story that you have in mind doesn't line up with Apocalypse World or whatever, then find the game that it does line up with. And so that way it points to the strengths of that game.
Mm-hmm. With any one shot anywhere, whether it's at the local gaming store or at a convention, don't be afraid to make pre-gen characters.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to make them kind of stereotypical.
Mm-hmm.
It's just makes it really easy for people to slide into those. And if they want to add some niche to the character, that's fine.
That's actually what I prefer if I sit down to a convention game. Unless it's something like Apocalypse World, where
typecast it makes it easier for this person to be like, well, this is the thing that I'm good at. It kind of promotes more teamwork when the characters are a bit unbalanced.
Well, it's a lot easier to sell to people too. This is the ranger. Right. This is the rogue. This is the whatever. This is the ranger who kind of is a ranger, but then also has this conflict with this god, and that's not what a one shot is for.
Some background is good, but keep it simple.
Right. So you want those big archetypal things, so they can just say, you can describe it in a couple sentences really quick and easy, right?
And the last thing I would say is something that I don't do a very good job of telling myself, but if I have been looking forward to playing a game forever and I've never gotten to play it, I would rather you do a mediocre job of running it for me and still get to play it than never get to play it because you're worried that you don't have it down 100%. Like, just run the game.
So I've got 3 things, right, that tie directly into what you're talking about. The first one is a lot of people haven't played these games, and that's why they're showing up, right? So tell them, give them a disclaimer. Not really the most familiar with this game, but I really wanted to play it. Glad you came. Let's see how awesome we can make this be, right? Focus on, elements of the game, what makes that game special, and it's a one shot. If you have to sort of flub some of the rules, keep the flavor, keep the essence of the rules and the essence of the game, but if you sort of have to massage things to get through, then just do that, right? Second thing is that knowing that those players, like you mentioned, they wanted to play that game, but they just haven't gotten to do it yet. Everyone has came to sit down and play this game. They're coming to have a good time, right? So it's like if you watch a comedian on TV, they're funny, right? But you don't laugh the same way you do when you go see a comedy show, because you're primed to have a good time and laugh because you've gone to the effort to go to wherever the comedy is happening, right? Mm-hmm. You're like sort of in your mind, you've primed yourself to have this good time in that kind of a way. And I think knowing that is the majority of getting over the first hurdle of making it happen and getting it done. I had a third thing, but it's gone.
I thought that was the third thing.
No, I don't think so. I don't know. Either way.
Replay the tape.
Roll it back. I guess my third thing is consistency, right?
Oh, I was actually just thinking that.
Yeah, so...
right in my brain, the next thing.
We started this, the first one. I think we had a couple players. We drafted 2 more. Yeah,
it was 2 players, and then all the other people in our group that showed up to run games, just sat in to, bulk up the group. So it was 2 of them, one of us running, and then, 1 or 2 of us sitting at the table to play games with them.
So if you can draft your own players from your table that want to play these games, but maybe don't have enough to make a full gaming group, right? Bring them with you because they can help fill out the table, right? And It makes it that much easier. And then if they like it and they get into it, then if things grow, you can always prep 2 games, one for each of you. And then if you need to, you split up and are able to accommodate more players. But the biggest part of it is the consistency of doing this. So when you run the first one, right, don't get frustrated if nobody shows up. That's fine. It's hard. You've got to get the word out there. You've got to convince people to come play these games with you. So if no one shows up, that's great. Set up the next date. Because I feel like once you
Not like literally the next day.
No, I'm the next date. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. You don't have to come back the very next day.
No. So after that session is over, right? Go to the gaming store, go to their calendar, and set up the next date. Because I feel like once you have a date on a calendar, you've committed to something, right? Mm-hmm. And the earlier you can promote it, the better you're going to do. And it draws people out, and then it gives people an advance notice to sort of look at their schedule. Can I make this work? Can I not? Whatever. And don't be surprised if you have people that come to you and say, oh, I saw you ran Apocalypse for last week or last month. I thought it was kind of neat, but it's not really my kind of game. But I see that you're running Dogs in the Vineyard now, right? And I really wanted to try that game, so I'm here for that game. So don't be upset or frustrated if your sort of numbers kind of rise and, ebb and flow with the games that you're running, because a lot of these games are pretty niche games. Mm-hmm. Right.
Also, people might just be busy that day.
That's true, too.
So maybe you didn't know it. You accidentally planned it on prom weekend.
Right, yeah. You're trying to drive through ISU when graduation is happening and you can't get there on time. Right. So I'm going to mention a few things about promotion stuff. And we already talked about making use of the store's Facebook group and their social media presence, and also yours. But the same way I mentioned making those small banners for Facebook or whatever your promotion stuff is, we have little laminated signs that we make with the game. So we print off the game cover and then I laminate those, and I have like a little table card holder or whatever so that people see what's happening. So even if you don't have anybody that comes to show up, if they see you sitting at a table with dice out and this table card with, this stuff on it, they're going to say, what is that game?
Just something that looks inviting. So it doesn't look like I came to the store, I already know these people, they're, mm-hmm. here to game with me. It's, something that says, gamer wanted,
right. Yep.
Free spot at my game right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you could even go so far as to put the players wanted thing on there. Cause at a lot of conventions, you see that they have players wanted signs for different games that they're running or whatever. And then also be mentally prepared to have conversations with people about, hey, what are you doing over here? What is this? And then you can pitch them, well, we're doing this indie RPG Day thing and we're going to start at 10 o'clock and this is what the game we're running. So if you want to sit in, that's cool. Come on over and grab a seat and whatever, right? Mm-hmm. Along with all this stuff, you need to bring things for them to be able to make the game work, right? So you need the book or the PDF for you to be able to use. You need character sheets. You need dice for yourself. You need extra dice for other people, because depending on what you're playing, they may not have their own dice or they may not have the dice you're using for the game. So just make sure you have, enough for the table to work. You don't necessarily have to have a set for every person per se, but you need to have enough to make the game work, I guess.
And pencils.
Yeah, pencils.
I think really that's about it. Like, consistency is probably the biggest thing that's made this work, is that we just keep doing it.
Right. I agree. And so we've talked about how to make it work, right?
And I guess giving the people what they want, so you're not going to know the first couple times. So like I said, we prepped several games, but mm-hmm. once we've ran games for these people for a while, then we're like, well, what else do you guys want to play? Mm-hmm. And we make a pretty decent effort to bring whatever that is mm-hmm. With us. And
I will say, as we've done these, it gets easier and easier each time to do it. It's, success breeds success in a lot of ways. And every time we've had a good time, the next one is that much easier to run and that much easier to run. And now we've almost basically formed an entire gaming group around our indie RPG days. And that's just what we do now. It's like, when is the next one? Oh, we're working it out. We'll post it up on the Facebook group or whatever, and we'll see you guys there. We know mm-hmm. that there's going to be this group of people there probably every time.
It's to the point now where, like, if one of them's not there, I'm like, oh, where's so-and-so?
Right.
Are they okay? Yeah. Like, should I check
Did
on
anybody
them?
hear from them? Should we send out a search party? Right. Yeah. Right on. So we kind of talked about it sounds a little like we're making it simpler and easier than what it is, but it really is just that straightforward and simple. Consistency, friendly, bringing the games, being ready to go, and being able to sort of work around the amount of players that you have in the moment and letting it grow as you are, with your own success of running the games, right? So all that stuff aside and setting all this up, is there anything that you have, like, unintended things that you've gained out of doing this that have surprised you that you didn't think you would learn or happen or whatever?
I don't know. I'm, like, just in general, a lot more confident. I feel like I can have that kind of, like, good enough behavior that you develop with your home gaming group.
Right.
Where you're like, yeah, like, I prepped this. Yeah, I know what I'm doing.
Kind of.
We'll make it work.
Right? Yeah.
I don't know if that's good or bad necessarily, but
Well, no, I agree. Confidence is a big thing. So
I'm definitely way more comfortable running games and even if it wasn't the same group of people, like if I showed up and it was 3 strangers, I'd just be like, okay, well, here we go.
Right.
I only did 1 session standing up, and that was my first one. After that, I was like, okay, I guess I can sit down.
Right. Right on.
That's still like the funniest GM moment for me. It was like I got done and I was like, oh my God, I didn't sit down the entire 2 hours that just happened. So yeah, no, I guess that's just, I don't have the same nerves about it that I did before. And I feel like I could take a game because the first 2 or 3 games that I ran were ones that I've run a lot.
Right.
For our home gaming table. And then the last 2 that I ran were ones that I ran one time. One of them was like one time a long time ago. And then I did it like one more time before we went in. And then the other one I had never done before. We just did it once that same day, earlier that day before we went to the store. And I was like, well, I had read the rules and it wasn't something that was complicated.
Right.
But yeah. And it turned out okay. Everybody survived. As a human, not necessarily as a character. Everybody made it through. Everybody had a good time. And I got good feedback. And they came out again the next week. So.
Right. Or next month.
Next month, yeah.
Right on. So, yeah, that's where I was going to go with my confidence. I've always felt pretty comfortable at our table running games. But there is a big difference between running games at your table at home versus running games with strangers at a store or a convention or something like that. And now it's just sort of like, okay, cool. There are some games that still I get a little jittery about because I really like those games, Yeah. And so it's more about I want to do this game justice as opposed to the fact that I'm running a game for people or whatever. But yeah, and then it's also challenged me and made me, I feel like, a better storyteller or a game master because when you run for your home table and you've been running for them for quite a while, you get sort of accustomed to the approaches that people take and you learn to what to expect from them and whatever. And now when you sit down with strangers, you don't know. So it keeps you on your toes a little bit, right?
Yeah, that's 100% true.
And I've always been a pretty big improvisational GM, but now it's challenged me in new ways, right? And so it's fun and it's brought some life back to me for running games and challenging myself because not that I was ever like upset or tired of doing it, but you sort of find this rhythm that you slip into, right, with your home table. And I feel like that needs to be shaken up sometimes, and it will make you a better storyteller and at your home table by doing this. And then you may find that you're able to surprise your home players in ways that you wouldn't have been able to had you not exposed yourself to sort of the creative sensibilities of the other new players around your table by doing this. So I think we've focused a lot on the positive aspects of doing this, and I would say that it is largely very positive. We've had a great experience doing this. However, I do think it is important to sort of be honest about some of the struggles that we have had. So do you think that there are any major hurdles or struggles that we have had in doing this that we have had to deal with or overcome?
When we first started, we prepped 2 or 3 games, and it kind of sucked. When you were the person that prepped a game and you didn't get to run it. That was a bummer.
I prepped a really cool, well, at least what I thought was really cool, Harry Potter murder mystery kind of a thing with Voldemort or Tom Riddle or whatever, And it was like, yeah, we don't want to do that. We don't want to do Bubblegum Shoot. We're going to do this other game. And I was like, oh, I felt like the kid that asks the girl to prom and she says no. And all your friends are looking at you. That was kind of a bummer.
Yeah. Well, and like the first time I showed up, I had Bedlam Hall prepped and you ran 7th C. And it was pirates, and there was like a pirate flag and gold doubloons.
Yeah.
And I was like, but I wore this pretty Ouija board dress. So I ran it the next month. So it wasn't like a huge deal. But at the time, I was a little sad.
Yeah. Well, I do think that you need to realize that there are some games that really don't compete against each other well.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, if you have a game like Bedlam Hall, which is amazing fun and so awesome, but it's
not as easy to sell as Pirates.
Yes, exactly. Like, what is this game? It's Pirates of the Caribbean, basically, right? Or Indiana Jones, but like,
You're like,
further
Pirates,
back.
and I'm like, this is a role-playing game for terrible people.
Yeah.
It's depressing.
Right.
Do you want to come hang out with me?
So I suppose you need to be aware of the hurdles you can have and hiccups you can have by what games you're sort of pitching against one another, because sometimes when you do that, one becomes a very clear choice. Like, oh, that sounds neat, but Pirates. Yeah, Pirates. I like Pirates. That's fun, right? Mm-hmm. Sails and swashbuckling and cannons and pistols. Right on, let's do it. Yeah, Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, that was kind of the bummer. Also, I guess again, when we first started running, we were kind of side by side with the D&D group.
Oh yeah,
we have been a couple of times, and it's like we've talked about before. Indie RPGs is a niche community, so I found it less frustrating where we're at here than I did at Gen Con. I was very upset with it there when, like, the Adventures League table, like every last one of them is full and sold out, and they're like literally people who can't get seats into these games, and I can't seem to get anybody to come to my game.
Right, yeah.
It's fun, I swear. You guys wanted to play a game, right? Like, just come over here and play a game with me. So you get that same kind of thing too, where it's a little disheartening when there's like 8 people at a table, and then there's, like you're struggling with like to get 1 or 2 to show up to play your game. Now we're not there anymore. We have a full table, which is cool, but we've done this for 12 months now.
Yeah.
So I somehow managed to kick my slipper all the way under your chair.
That's all good. That's all good.
No, it's not. My foot is cold.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hang on. So I think that points back to the thing that we said was the most important earlier, was consistency, because people saw that we were continuing to do this. Hey, it must be going well. Maybe I should finally try and go, or whatever, And
well, I think it's true too. Like, don't take it personally.
Yeah, that's true.
Because it's not. It's not personal. Some people just, just like your home gaming group, some people don't want to try new and different games, and that's okay. And that's not on you. So, show up, try it again, have a blast with the 2 people that show up at your table, and just, it's whatever. You don't have to compare yourself to other people's fun.
No, yeah, because you're not trying to like measure fun or something. Whatever. Did you have fun? Then yeah, then that's all that matters, right?
Fun measurement is so much bigger than your measurement.
Right.
Just saying. Girth. Lots of fun girth going on here.
Girthiness of fun. Right on. So I would say safety tools is another important thing to mention. We're a big fan of the stoplight. I think we have it on our website if you need something like that. And we've done an episode about it before in the past. So safety tools, I think, is an important thing, because these are strangers and people you don't know. So you want to make sure that you're, aware of different people's sensibilities or whatever.
It's not something that you should have to be weird about either.
No, it's not really not. It's not a big deal.
If you put it on your table and nobody ever uses it, hurrah, know? And that's been my experience most of the time. Pretty much nobody ever uses it. But it's there if someone feels uncomfortable and feels that they need to use it. So.
Yeah, it's the idea of a hard hat. Hopefully, if you're on a construction site, you don't ever need to actually use the hard hat.
Glasses. I'm hoping nothing flies at my face, but if it does, I am prepared.
Right on. The other thing is that sometimes, now the group that we've been playing with for quite a while now, I feel like we have a better idea of where their preferences are game-wise. So I mentioned I ran Dogs in the Vineyard, which is a game about like hard moral choices and about sort of like these fictionalized Western Mormons in Old West Utah, right? And so it's got hard moral choices in that game. And I would say that I wouldn't bring that game to the table cold, basically, right? I would make sure that you kind of understand the people and have a backup if you're going to bring a game that's like that, because it's definitely not a game for everyone, right? In the same way that not everyone wants to play Apocalypse World, but I think that some of these games are very narrow, right? So Bluebeard's Bride is a great example of it. Like, I love Bluebeard's Bride. It's an amazing game. Don't think that's a game that you want to bring to spring on people because of the tone and what it is, right? Mm-hmm. So I think you definitely need to be mindful about your choices and what games you're choosing. But that's not hard to do. It's I think if you all the games that we just listed here, all 20 of them, the only one that I think presents some complications that way would be Dogs in the Vineyard, really. I could understand some people being like, I'm not real big on, whatever Korean War stuff or whatever, I don't want to do that. But there's no,
Blood in the Chocolate has...
There's some mature content in there, yeah.
Some spots.
Right. But you could very easily tailor those out, because it's not hard to do. So, all right on. So I think we'll wrap this one up here. Did you have anything else to close this one out about Indie RPG Days? Right on. So the only closing thought that I have is that if you have a table of people that don't want to play the games that you want to run or whatever, right? Like Lacey said, it's nothing personal, but there are people out there that I guarantee want to play these games. You just have to find them. So get out there, make use of the store, make use of their social media, post flyers at the store if you need to, whatever you got to do. But get out there and play the games that you want to run, right? And run more games and have a good time. It's way easier than what you think it is, right? Because there are people out there that want to play these games, right?
Right.
Right on. All right. Well, quick Gonna Geek promo for the Starling Tribune. Starling Tribune 237, Arrow Lost Canary. Starling Tribune reporter, Stargate pioneer Chris and Michelle review the Arrow Season 7, 18th episode, Lost Canary. Discussion topics include the amazing logo change to the Canary logo, Mia's great Oliver Queen imitation during the episode. If this episode was Laurel's last episode, the minor disappointment in the episode's fight choreography, the welcome Sonic Scream watch comeback, and what exactly are those future Canary hunters? So you can check them out. That is the Starling Tribune, and you can find them on the Gonna Geek Network. So if you like what we do here at Just One More Fix, you can support us at patreon.com/JustOneMoreFix and join the other awesome Patreons. Join the other awesome patrons like Alistair H., Tiziano Furlano, Simon McNair, Alan White, and the OG Toddles. And you can also get access to all of our pre-shows and raw audio feeds, early access to our actual plays as they get edited, and get access to our quarterly zine, the first one coming out this April, called Worms. And it's a sort of OSR body horror investigative adventure. And it was a lot of fun for us to playtest and run both here at our home table and at our Indie RPG Days. Right, so I think that'll do it for us this week, and we will see you guys next week. Thanks for listening. This has been an episode of Just One More Fix. Music has been provided by Kevin MacLeod. You can find him at incompetech.com. You can support us at patreon.com/JustOneMoreFix or follow us on Twitter at Just One More Fix.